It is on, it is on, it is on. Breaking news in the world of mixed martial arts as George St.Pierre will take on Michael Bisping for the UFC middleweight title. No date, no venue just yet, but Dana White was on SportsCenter earlier today stating that yes, George St.Pierre will be the next challenger to Michael Bisping's middleweight title. Unbelievable. I am so ecstatic for this fight. I wanted this fight so badly. This is a fight that will be the biggest fight of the 2017 year, bar none, even with the return of Conor McGregor, and I will tell you why. If Conor McGregor does return in 2017, which I don't think he will, but even if Conor McGregor does return, this is the biggest fight of 2017 in the 2017 calendar year by far. And I'm going to tell you guys why. Michael Bisping has been in the UFC for 13 years. George St.Pierre has been a part of the UFC for the same amount of time. They both came into the sport around the same amount of time. They've been in the sport the same amount of time. They came into the sport around the same time. Bisping, the Ultimate Fighter 3 winner, GSP, the young up-and-coming phenom that he was back in the day as a challenger to Matt Hughes' welterweight title. Both of these guys are the two winningest fighters in UFC history. Bisping owns 20 wins inside the UFC. GSP has 19. That was a record that he had for quite some time that was taken away from him due to his inactivity the last 4 years. And Bisping took it with his wins over Luke Rockhold, Anderson Silva, Dan Henderson, and Thales Leites in the last few years. On his pursuit to winning the middleweight title and defending the UFC middleweight title. This fight is a fight in which we will see the two biggest UFC international stars go head-to-head in one fight. This is a rare, rare moment in the sport of mixed martial arts. It's a rare, rare moment in the sport of boxing. In combat sports history, we haven't seen two guys in one sport with this much international appeal fight each other in quite some time, outside of Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, of course. This is a huge, huge fight for the UFC, and it will obviously, in my eyes, be the biggest fight of 2017. I just recently posted on my Facebook how I think this fight needs to go down. For all the Thomas Take Sports podcast listeners, this fight has to be done right. This fight, being that it's announced right now, is perfect to be had later in the year, whether it's September, October, one of those months, even August, one of those 3 months. If this fight is pushed towards the end of the year, it gives the UFC fan so much to look forward to as the year goes on. This will give the UFC an opportunity to make this fight an international fight, as it should be, as it is, and promoting it as such, promoting it in Toronto, promoting it in England, promoting it all around the world. These are two guys that can generate that type of buzz for a fight. Michael Bisping, one of the best trash talkers in MMA history. George St.Pierre, one of the greatest champions that the sport has ever seen and quite possibly will ever see as history goes on. This needs to be promoted in a way that will let the UFC fan nibble at the carrot throughout the entire year. And if it's promoted this way, I guarantee you all, this will be the biggest pay-per-view, selling the highest selling pay-per-view that the UFC has ever had. The biggest story in the sport of mixed martial arts since the day he left the sport was, when will GSP return? Will he return? When or will he return? Now we know that he is returning. Now we know that he has a foe that he will be fighting in Michael Bisping, a guy that can sell virtually any fight in any matchup. This is as big a fight as any. This will go down in history as one of the biggest fights in UFC history. It has to. And in order for it to really be maximized, because the promotion does have to put their legs behind it a little bit, In order for the promotion to do that, much like they've done with, McGregor and Diaz and Silva and Sonnen, they need to make this a world fight, a fight that will be transcendent to the world, to the international stage. You have the two fastest-selling international stars fighting each other. And Michael Bisping, when he fought in Manchester, when he fought in London in the O2 Arena, when GSP fought at the Rogers Center in front of 55,000 people, that is not a false statement to say that these two guys are the biggest international stars that the UFC has ever had. Bisping on the European level, GSP on the Canadian level. These are the two biggest names in their respective countries in this sport going up against each other. Obviously, you could say Anderson Silva. Obviously, you can say Conor McGregor as well. But Anderson Silva hasn't fought in Brazil as many times as Bisping has fought in Britain. And GSP has the Canadian masses foaming at the mouth, waiting for his return. Now that they have it, now that they know that he's got an opponent, this is a huge fight. And we saw him sell out 55,000 seats in less than 10 minutes when he went up against Jake Shields. I believe it was UFC 129. Jose Aldo was on that card in the co-main versus Mark Hominick as well. So we know the drawing power of these two guys. The fact that you can put two of the biggest names in the sport, put them up against each other for one fight. This fight is going to be bananas. I mean, this is insane. This is the fight that I wanted, the fight that I got. Wanting a fight, hoping that a matchup comes to fruition, and then seeing that it is literally like Christmas. It is like Christmas morning. This is fantastic. This is a fantastic fight. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear all the promotion, to see all the promotion. The sport is different now than it was even 4 years ago. They had the countdown shows that they still have, but now they have UFC embedded. They have stuff on Fight Pass. It's just a little bit more promotion now being put into these main events. This fight deserves all the credit in the world to be promoted as such. And for anyone, any fan of fighting to say that this is a ridiculous fight, that GSP shouldn't get an automatic title shot, I will say that you guys don't know anything about the sport of mixed martial arts. First off, GSP was the champion for 8 years. 8 years he defended his title in mixed martial arts, fighting 2-3 times a year, taking on number one contender after number one contender after number one contender, defeating them all in his championship run up until his hiatus, so to speak. If anybody deserves an automatic title shot in any division, coming off a 4-year hiatus, it is George St.Pierre, without a doubt. He does not want to go back to welterweight anymore. He does not want to cut the weight. He's 35. He's going to be 36 probably by the time him and Michael Bisping meet in the octagon. There is no point in them forcing him to cut weight. The weight class at welterweight, his former champion weight class, the champion, he was the former champion, and you can't even really say he was only former because he stepped down. He stepped down with the belt. He vacated the title. He didn't lose the title. So, he could still be regarded as a champion. He never lost his belt in his championship run. So, if anybody deserves an automatic title shot in any weight division, it is George St.Pierre, rather than a guy like a John Jones or a Conor McGregor. George St.Pierre earned the right to have the title shot given to him as an automatic title shot. And this is great on the other side of the coin, too, for Michael Bisping. He gets the payday that he wanted for over the course of his 13-year career. He hasn't made $500,000, where fighters that have lost, in the case of Ronda Rousey, have made $3 million. And Ronda Rousey fought in the UFC for 4 or 5 years, if that. Bisping's been fighting in the UFC for 13. The last pay-per-view he fought on, the main event where he defended his belt versus Dan Henderson, had over 400,000 pay-per-view buys. That's a very low number. Not many people could take the fight seriously due to the fact that Henderson was ranked in the top 15, actually ranked 13th, I believe. So I watched the fight. Hardcore MMA fans loved the fight because they know the history between these two. where the casual fans didn't sign up for it. They didn't step in line. They didn't wait to buy a ticket, or they didn't even go to the bar to watch it, apparently. So this is the perfect bounce-back fight for pay-per-view numbers for Bisping. This is the perfect opportunity for Bisping to take on another legend that he could add to his resume if he beats him, which I'm not going to give a prediction on this fight just yet. I'm going to just bathe in the speculation of the fight continuously from now up until when I know the day that the fight will happen and where it will happen. I am so excited for this fight. I'm a huge George St.Pierre fan. I'm a big Michael Bisping fan as well. These are two guys that I've watched for as long as they have been in the UFC, and to know that they are going to fight each other in a matchup I never thought would come to fruition. I am really excited. Every MMA fan should be excited. Every MMA fan needs to watch this fight. Every combat sports fan needs to watch this fight. This is a fight that is two completely contrasts in style. Bisping is a stick-and-move type boxer with great takedown defense. Bisping is a stick-and-move fighter with great takedown defense. GSP is a great boxer with wonderful, the best takedown offense probably in the sport of MMA, in the history of the sport. So this is a real test for Bisping, and this is a real test for George St.Pierre, being that he took the 4 years off that he needed to take mentally, and more so to see the sport clean itself up with the benefit of USADA that is now within the sport of the UFC, or within the sport of MMA, inside the UFC, inside the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I needed to do this as a part one of today's show. I have a huge show today. I'm doing 32 teams, 32 picks in 32 days, and we're going with the San Francisco 49ers second overall, but I had to talk about this fight. I saw Dana White on SportsCenter. I tuned into it, got the notification on my phone that he was coming on to SportsCenter. I watched it, and I literally yelled in a grocery store out loud, yes, yes, and celebrated, jumped up and down with no shame whatsoever, no matter how many people were staring at me like I was a nutcase. I cannot wait for this fight. All the promotion for it is going to be some of the best promotion for a fight, hopefully, I'm going to say, that we will ever see. It should be. The UFC really needs to put all their weight into this fight heading into 2017, more so than McGregor's comeback. This fight needs to be put, on the mainstream level in every which capacity. A world press tour needs to happen for this fight. They need to put the $10 million that they put in Aldo and McGregor for it not to even happen, needs to go for this fight with Bisping and GSP. The Aldo-McGregor fight was on a world press tour. They put $10 million into the fight, and Aldo bruised a rib and pulled out. Then Mendez fought McGregor, and we know what happened after that. But this fight needs to be put on the world press tour. September is not much of a successful month for the UFC. The UFC is going to Toronto, the Air Canada Centre, in September. Statistically, September hasn't been much of a successful month for the UFC. They could really, really make bank and cash in, putting this fight, Bisping versus GSP, Air Canada Centre in Toronto, the return of Canada's favorite son, the King of Canada, George St.Pierre, versus the brash Brit, the middleweight champion, Michael Bisping. History could be made. GSP could become another fighter, joining the trio of Couture, McGregor, and BJ Penn. GSP could become another fighter that puts himself in that company, and he deserves to be put in that company. He deserves the chance to be put in that company, no doubt about it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Bisping versus GSP, we got to fight. I'm so excited for this fight. Every MMA fan should be excited as well. Every combat sports fan should be excited as well. Take care.